I already introduced myself once, but I'm going to give you a little more background about myself. I'm Johnny Diggz. If you're wondering if that's my real name, no, it's not. It's my stage name. In addition to doing what I do for Voxeo Labs, I'm a professional dueling piano player, and Johnny Diggz is my stage name. Most people call me Johnny Diggz. So you guys can call me Johnny Diggz or just Diggz, as most people just shorten it down to Diggz. I am the Chief Evangelist for Voxeo Labs. I'm going to switch to this one. What does that mean? I'm a developer evangelist. I'm a developer advocate. I try to put myself, I am a developer, although I have not been developing much lately. But I put myself in the shoes of a developer and try to think about how our APIs look like and how developers actually use them, rather than a downward approach where an engineering team thinks about how a feature that people might want. I look from the developer's perspective, and I work with a lot of developers, and I do events like this, and I watch and listen and learn, and I bring that information back to engineers who improve the API based on the feedback that we get, which is why we do these events. We do it because we want to get instant feedback, and we build that feedback into the APIs, which then developers use, and there's a loop. Voxeo Labs has been around since 2009, and we're based in Menlo Park, California. We have three main products and services that are part of our offering. The number one being Tropo. Tropo is an API to cloud communication service. So it allows you to build these types of apps that Greg was talking about using an API. You don't have to deploy any equipment. You don't have to learn anything about H323 or SIP or any of that crazy stuff that he was talking about that I wasn't really paying attention because my eyes glaze over every time I hear it. No offense, Greg. I don't know where you went. But Tropo makes it excruciatingly easy. It's free for developers on our platform to deploy applications, and then you just pay as you go. You don't have to spend $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 on building an infrastructure. We already did that. We already did the hard part. All you have to do is come up with an app. A couple of our other products, Phono and Amici, work in tandem with Tropo. Phono is a soft phone. It's instead of a phone that you hold in your hand, it sits in your web browser or on your mobile device, and you can call using a completely free open source JavaScript library. So today I'm going to talk about two things. One is the Tropo API, and the other is the concept of call control. One of my good friend of mine, Ben Klang, I asked him recently what call control means to him, and this is what he said. Call control is the ability for applications to take control of a call, the phone call, and do something. And hopefully, the goal is to add value to that call on behalf of the calling parties. So you don't want to just control someone's calls just for the sake of controlling it. Hopefully you're going to add some value. So conceptually that's a nice thing, but in practice, what does it mean? So we're going to go through a little exercise here, and we're going to discuss the types of apps that you can build with call control. I'm going to ask you guys to reach down into your brains and think about these types of calls and give me an example. So very, very simplest type of call control app is someone calling in to an app. So a user, using their phone, their landline, cell phone, they call into an application. Can anyone give me an example of that type of application? One example of it. Somebody calling into some application, and that application responds, but they're not calling another person. IVR is, yes, is a type of, is an example, is a description of this type, but it's not actually an app. but an IVR would be that type of thing. Yes, in the back. Huh? Oh, IVR, okay. How about an actual practical application, a type of IVR? Like, you call someone and they don't answer, what happens? Voicemail. Voicemail is a very simple example of this. Can anybody think of another type where you're calling in and you're not talking to a real person? What was that? Digital receptionist. Yes, absolutely. How about, have you ever called to check the movie time? Right? You're not talking to a real person, you're calling into an app, it's reading you when the next movie is. Yes? Yes, absolutely. Virtual assistant, right? Oh, parking. Parking, yes. Absolutely. Those are rather new application. All right, another type of application. Server calls you. An application calls you. What's a type of scenario where an application might call your phone? Yes? Credit card use. Like for security, so they want to verify that you're actually using your card. Correct. SMS callback. What do you mean by that? Send an SMS to the server calls you back to verify maybe your identity? Absolutely. So identity verification. Anybody ever get a notification that maybe a package has been delivered? Or how about your prescription is ready? You ever get a phone call with your prescription's ready? Flight delayed? Your flight's been delayed? In the US we get a lot of those. Especially me, because for some reason all of my flights are always delayed. Alright, so here's another scenario. User calls server, calls user. So somebody calls in to an application does something, and then it calls out to another user. Can you think of a use case for this? An application where this type of, this would be useful. Yes? Virtual translator? Sure, that would absolutely work with this. Anybody else? User calls in, maybe this asks for some sort of code, and this calls another person, like a calling card code, maybe? Calling card application? So was that call screening? Call screening, absolutely, yes.
IVR to a call center.
IVR, calling into a call center, connecting to an agent to help you. One thing you could do here, record the call, right? Server sit in the middle, record the call. All very, very viable applications. Multiple users call a server. So there's an application running here. This guy calls in. This guy calls in. Why would somebody want to do that? Conference calling. That's the number one use for this. Server calls multiple users. So we get an application, something happens, and it triggers an outbound call. Why would you want to do that? When I say call or SMS, you could do either way. Data center, something goes wrong. Absolutely. Great application. Voice broadcast. And that kind of goes with the next one, I think, which is the one-to-many and the many-to-one. Voice broadcast, do this type of scenario. This also is very useful in a concept called reverse 911, right? Somebody calls in to send an alert, calls maybe all the parents in the school, calls maybe everybody in the neighborhood, maybe calls your baseball team. This scenario, also good with conference calling, multiple people calling into an application, and listening to one speaker.